interviews where he was giving the mic to the people to discuss their experiences, not with just with FEMA, but also the insurance company.
Martha?
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Well, I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm awesome.
I'm finally catching up with these podcasts or whatever spaces.
Spaces. Yeah. Well, it's good to have you. I saw you down there. I needed to hear your voice.
I have a very low voice. My dad was an Irish tenor.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah. Well, it sounded a lot better on him.
Cool.
Anyway, I'm loving the Gladio thing. It's absolutely wonderful.
Thank you.
And sometime soon, I'm going to be doing something with one of Ortane Devian's targeted individual groups. And we're going to talk about a little of that and the mine. And
I would love to have you on a podcast on the Colonel's Corner over on Rumble anytime you're ready.
Oh, that would be wonderful.
Yeah,
that would be very wonderful. I can talk about the mine right off the top of my head.
I know you can. And because you interacted so much with the Air Force, I would love to be one of the people that get to interview you. So
that would be wonderful.
Well, I will DM you to set that up.
There were some really, really wonderful things that the Air Force people did for my family, for our children, for us, and even after the property was stolen.
Right.
They did some wonderful things for us that I can't speak about, because if I do, I can jeopardize their career. And that is a sad situation.
Well, we can generically talk about it without naming them.
I'm just afraid they would figure out.
They won't be able to. It's been too long. But that's the reason why I want to have that conversation with you, because your story says so much about how this whole thing works, where the government and their acolytes screw people, while the people that are down the chain in the military have good hearts and they have the best intentions, but they are not free to do as much as they would like to.
No.
Yeah.
No. Well, they can't. They're so compartmentalized. My best friend since high school, her ex-husband worked out there. He retired from out there. And they knew all about how close our families, their children and mine, are still very close friends. But he was never, ever allowed to come up to the mine. He worked right down the hill, but he was not allowed to come up there. They just didn't want people to see. They didn't want people to like us either.
So I have a friend that I've talked to off the record that retired from there as well about your story.
Oh.
So.
Well, I hope he liked us.
Oh, he loved you. And he was brokenhearted about what happened. He came along a long time after you guys were already gone, but it's basically a legend out there. They all know what happened. And it's a big deal, and we need to have that story, and I would love to be part of it. So
yes, I would love you to be, because nobody can comprehend it as much as people who are in the military and who have fought for our country and believed in our country. And then when you realize what transpired, is just infuriating.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Well, let's set that up. And
let's do.
Okay. All right. That sounds awesome.
Okay. And by the way, that was also an Operation Gladio operation out there. That's
I
exactly
yes.
what we had.
Yeah, and that's the reason why I want to have that conversation. I didn't know that you would be open to that, or I would have asked a lot sooner. So,
Oh
awesome,
yeah.
awesome.
I waited for a very long time. I've had a lot of people that wanted to interview me. I've had, a lot of things. And I have just waited until I thought the time was right.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't
awesome.
want to just go here, there, and everywhere and talk to anybody that will talk to me. I can do that on Twitter.
And you do it so well as
Well, I am very, very, I can't even think of the word for it. I'm very driven to do it. I feel that this is why I was born there. There was only one family in the whole world that came from there. And I happened to be born in April 1st of 1952, and they started the bombs in January of 1951.
and
So I went through all of that.
yeah,
And I went through all of that with the military.
right. And so for
And
those of you
Nazis.
who don't know Martha's story, her family went through what you guys could it is very similar in one aspect to a situation that could have quickly became a Ruby Ridge. It could have quickly became a Waco type experience because the government basically attacked her family and stole her land. And we probably don't want to say any more about it today because we need to get to our lesson. But you guys need to hear her story, and you need to hear how her family handled it, because it is just, it's a tragedy that it all occurred, and it shows you what a bully our government has been to its own people. Well before January 6th, they were persecuting people in the United States to do whatever the hell they wanted.
Yes, they did to my family all my life.
Yeah.
My life.
Yeah.
Yes, and
so we will.
There was a plan from the reports that I got. The plan was for us to try to protect our property like the Bundy family did.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were going to be killed. And I had different groups that not only came to me, but to other people in our family. And they said it was worth dying over. They wanted to go out there because of the injustice. And we said no.
Yeah, you were being set up.
It was a setup.
Yeah.
And I do not want to be responsible for anyone dying. I'll come back and fight another day instead of a massacre.
Right.
Yeah.
All right.
But anyway,
we will get together and come up with a date fairly soon. And then we will bring that story to everybody. Thank you.
Great.
Thank you so much for coming up.
Oh, yeah. Thank you for having me.
Sure. All right. We're going to get started. We're finishing out chapter 12. And let's see. We've got it. We're in the Cold War and counterinsurgency, even though it's not a counterinsurgency, it's actually an insurgency. And Bridget, if you will remind me at the end, because we're not gonna, we don't have a whole lot of this left. I want to make. I'm probably going to have a second space tonight, and I want to talk to everybody about what that's going to be about. So. Anyway, let's get started. To show how the system worked when the military and the CIA cooperated, it provided a tragic page out of the history of Africa. The arrival of independence from the former colony Belgium Congo, which went, for several years by the title Zaire as well. Again, I'm going to caveat this, guys, because we know the Congo story very well. I am going to give you the author's version of it, and we will interject what may or may not be true in addition to his words for any of the new people that haven't heard this story. The Congo was another of those crises that began in the twilight of the Eisenhower administration and lingered into the Kennedys. And for those of you who are new, that's not coincidence. The CIA scheduled these quote unquote crises to be at the end of one president's term and at the beginning of the others. Because of the chaos involved in that, they are basically free to do whatever the hell they want. The American operation occurred against the backdrop of political strife and residual colonialism from the Belgians. Trouble followed Independence Day, which was designated as June 30th, 1960. The Belgians has done as little as possible to prepare the Congo for independence, and to the extent that, for example, there were a mere 13 Congolese college graduates and no African officers in the Congolese army. And that was, of course, on purpose. They had been in the Congo for 350 years at this point, most of which it had been used at the personal discretion of the king, not even for the country, Belgium. He had pocketed all of the riches that they carved out of the country and treated these people as their slaves, to include cutting off little kids' hands when they didn't make their quota in mining. The Europeans' basic strategy was to concede independence, but to ensure that Belgium would be required to operate all of the institutions in Congo, therefore not giving them any independence at all. The Belgian commander of the Congolese army, General Emily Janssen, hold on, let me bring cousin it up. Is reported to have hammered home the point at a meeting with African soldiers where he wrote on a blackboard, "Avant independence," and the colonial relationship would endure. 5 days after independence, the Congolese army began to revolt against the Belgian officers at a place called Thysville, 90 miles from the capital. There at Camp Hardy, a main base of Force Republic, as the army was officially known, the Belgians were locked up. Now, I'm going to interject here because we know this to be a fact. Lumumba, Patrice Lumumba, is who got elected to be the prime minister. And he told Belgium that he was replacing all the Belgian officers. And the king, who had came down for the ceremony, basically said over his dead body, they weren't going to allow the new prime minister of a quote unquote independent Congo have his own military. So that's what the revolt was about. There were frantic stories of rapes and looting and unrest in the army units in Elizabethville and the capital, Leopoldville. A day of panic in Leopoldville followed on July 8th, when both the British and the French embassies ordered evacuation of all non-essential personnel. Several thousand Europeans fled across the Congo River to Brazzaville in the Congo Republic before rebel armed boats blocked the river. The revolt naturally triggered a response by the infant government of the Congo. Prime Minister Patrice Lumumba attempted to deal with the mutineers and restore order. He dismissed General Janssen. Then all 1,135 Belgian officers and gave promotions to the native soldiers who had been basically treated as if they were the enlisted people of the army. So this is when he got rid of all of the Belgian officers. Lumumba, the chief of a Mouvement National Congolese, was a young Black, the author calls him radical, but he was not radical, with Pan-African sentiments which is true because he wanted Africa to be their own leaders. He was one of the Congolese 13 college graduates and had been educated in the West. In May 1960 elections, Lumumba's party had garnered 35 seats to become the largest in the legislature and the only party with deputies elected in 5 of the 6 provinces. The Belgians would have liked to avoid a Lumumba cabinet, but the government inevitably coalesced around the biggest parliamentary party. While the charismatic Lumumba possessed a popular following, the army revolt allowed the Belgians to claim that the Congolese government was ineffective and intervene with Belgian paratroops on July 10th, 1960. It was very effective. It got rid of their ass. It was too effective. That's the problem. In various attempts to obtain countervailing assistance, Lumumba and the Congolese president, Kasavubu, appealed to the UN for protection. The cabinet asked for American help, and Lumumba, as prime minister, requested Soviet assistance when none came. The United Nations did pass a resolution to assist the Congo with the United States support. The UN security force that would eventually amount to 19,000 troops from 30 different European, Asian, and African nations was dispatched to the Congo. The maneuvers for foreign support drew the US and the Soviet Union into a local situation. The Eisenhower administration did not like Lumumba and did what it could to encourage opposition, especially from the more moderate Kasavubu. American diplomats in Leopoldville reported negatively on Lumumba's initiatives, and policies hardened rapidly after the station chief, Lawrence Devlin, cabled on August 18, 1960, that both the embassy and the station believed that the Congo was experiencing a quote-unquote communist takeover of the government. But it was the government. Hold on just one second. And again, not communist. All right. So, while the Americans made up their mind on Lumumba, they'd already made up their mind, by the way, the Belgians continued to occupy parts of the Congo, notably Katanga province, where many of the country's most valuable resources were located, like all of them. They urged, the Congolese politicians were urged by the Belgium to include Moise Tousambi to succeed from the Congo, which would further complicate the internal problems. So they're basically advocating the United States and Belgium and all of NATO basically are creating a civil war in the Congo because they don't like Lumumba. By going in, it'd be like the Brits coming over here and the French and talking to the South, telling them to succeed from the Union, you know, like they did. So, which resulted in, you know, massive amounts of deaths. So basically you have the NATO doing the exact same thing. The slow formation and arrival of the UN force, which most people believe was on purpose, allowed the Katanga secession to bring the nation to the brink of civil war. Political cleavages deepened in September 1960 when President Kosavuto, using a continued national crisis as justification, basically fired Lumumba and his cabinet, which he really had no authority to do. The Americans had made their choice. There was evidence that the 5412 group approved financial support for Kasavubu. They actually paid him off to create the constitutional coup. Lumumba, however, reacted by attempting to dismiss the president, increasing a impasse and potential civil war. Joseph Mobutu was the wild card in all of this. 29 years old, a journalist, army NCO, and member of Lumumba's party. Mobutu had been made an instant quote-unquote colonel when Lumumba promoted all of the senior enlisted people into the officer positions in the new army. He was then cultivated for weeks by American CIA officers, to include the station chief, Devlin. On September 14th, Mobutu launched a military coup and declared he was neutralizing Kasavubu, Lumumba, and all other politicians. So the CIA has launched a coup. The prime target, of course, was Lumumba because of his charismatic personality and the fact that most of the people in the Congo supported him. Mobutu hoped to take his place. Allen Dulles was amenable to any solution that excluded Lumumba, whom he regarded as someone that had a bad background and had already been bought by the communists, which of course they have to say in order to invoke 5412-2. At the CIA's small office, there were activities going on, and they were basically elevated to become a Congo task force. The sudden importance of Africa was revealed to Lawrence Devlin in September, when a top CIA scientist descended on Leopoldville with exotic poisons and a plan to assassinate Lumumba. While as the plots against Castro, senior participants had steadfastly denied any presidential approval, the Senate's investigation of the 1970s amply demonstrated that, approved or not, such CIA operations as this one against Lumumba actually occurred. Now, what's not mentioned here is in the middle of all of this, when Lumumba first took office back in the summer, he made a trip to the United States. Eisenhower refused to see him. What they're really after is the uranium at this point. Now, there's lots of other stuff, gold and diamonds and everything else in the Congo. They're very, very rich country, resource-wise. But they had the largest find of uranium in the 1950s. So we're just now into the 1960s. So it's very, very relevant. And Belgium had, while it was a colony, had negotiated a contract with the United States to provide 100% of the mined uranium to the United States. Lumumba came to the United States to meet with Eisenhower and says that he wants to honor that contract. He just wants to cut Belgium out of the contract, and he wants all of the profits of the contract to go to the Congo, because basically they were uneducated and had no medical facilities at all, because Belgium didn't care if they all died. And he wants to create a functioning country and needs money to do it. And so Eisenhower refused to meet with Lumumba, and Nixon did, and basically told him to pound sand and go home, that they weren't going to renegotiate the contract, and they didn't care whether he survived or not. And that is when he turned to the Soviet Union, because he realized that the writing was on the wall, that they were going to do whatever they could to sabotage him. So a lot of little details left out. Dealing with Lumumba took months, and exercising his ghost required years of fighting in the Congo. Lumumba was incarcerated for a while, then freed by friendly UN peacekeeping soldiers. He made for Stanleyville in the Oriental province, where supporters had set up yet another separatist government. Surveillance reports from the CIA were evidently instrumental in the capture of Lumumba by Mobutu's troops. They were actually led by the CIA. They weren't really Congolese troops, because everybody in the Congo loved Lumumba, except for the people that were paid off by the CIA. The degree of the CIA's complicity in the consequent murder, which happened on January 17th, 1961, which is just before JFK takes office, of course, the author says remains in dispute. because this book is written prior to the return of Lumumba's gold tooth and the exposure from the Belgian NCO that was given the command to boil him in acid and stole one of his gold tooth as a result of that. And several years ago, it was returned to Lumumba's heirs in the Congo. So now we know the whole story, and it's no longer in dispute. 4 days later, JFK was sworn in as the 35th president of the United States. For almost a month, the Congolese leader's fate remained the best kept secret in Katanga. JFK reacted with shock and anguish when he learned of Lumumba's death on February 13th. The president's advisor had already proposed an activist role, and the Kennedy had approved the recommendation. Mobutu's ban on political activity in the Congo expired with the new year. Soon, Mobutu announced his appointment of a new prime minister and cabinet, while Mobutu remained the strongman of the armed forces. This uneasy coalition in Leopoldville prevailed for 5 years until Mobutu returned from the shadows with a military coup that established his political domination in the Congo for the next 20 years. Although the Americans had what they wanted, an allied government in Leopoldville, the price was the entire disintegration of a country, with the formation of yet another secessionist government in the South Congolese province. There were no less than 4 nations in the Congo. The United States' role became one of reinforcing Leopoldville until Mobutu's army could reunite the nation by force, install another dictator. The UN peacekeeping force also sustained some criticism for acting so often in the American interest. It was the only reason they were there. The scale of the Congo program necessitated close cooperation with the CIA and the US military. The program was massive. By May 1961, the US had airlifted 20,000 UN troops and 6,000 tons of equipment to the Congo, while the Navy had brought in another 5,000 UN troops and repatriated some of the 2,600 direct military assistance to the Congolese included 18 helicopters, 10 aircraft, and 5 of the biggest C-119s. There were small arms, ammunition, and military advisors in the fall. And many of those military advisors, by the way, are the Cuban exile trained terrorists. In the fall of 1961, the UN troops moved against Moise Sambi in the Congolese area, who had hired European mercenaries and fought a pitched battle for Elizabethville. Now, that's bullshit. The European mercenaries is Otto Skorzeny, guys. These are the Gladio operators. So this was not the secessionists as if that was not all planned. This guy obviously doesn't know what he's talking about. Katanga was the largest to date NATO base ever set up. That's who the secessionists are. The entire secession of Katanga out of the Congo was done just in case they couldn't murder Lumumba. They'd still have access to the uranium. The entire thing was a setup. And Otto Skorzeny was given the NATO mission to go down there and build the NATO base to secure all of those resources. So, the political action specialist assisted and financed a new political party. Paramilitary operators provided more C-47 aircraft and hired the Cuban exiles, as I just said. They say it's just for pilots, but it wasn't just for pilots. With this assistance, the Mobutu army began the reconquest of the area. The secession dragged on for months, and barely had the Congo been reunited when, in the summer of 1963, a new rebellion commenced. This timing was the worst possible. The UN force was withdrawing while Mobutu's army remained far from combat effective. The best elements of the Congolese army were now units of white soldiers of fortune, principally of Belgian and English extraction, who were proud to call themselves mercenaries because their auto scores any. These are the Gladio operators. They came from all over Europe. It was the mercenaries combined with the CIA Air Force who spearheaded the operations. And they call them against the insurgents. And there's that word again. No, they're the people that want their country back. They were not insurgents. They're the indigenous people. We're the insurgents. This battle went on for another 5 years. There was a brief intervention by Belgian paratroopers flown in by the Air Force in 1964 when Europeans in the area were held hostage for over 3 months. The use of American Special Forces was considered but rejected on this occasion, and even the Belgians were considered unnecessary by Colonel Mike Hoare, whose 5 commando units of mercenaries was close to reaching Stanleyville at the moment of the airdrop. Over 2,000 foreign nationals were rescued and evacuated. The Congo itself was renamed then to Zaire. Through all of this, the CIA air unit remained in place as an absolutely vital resource because they created the shit. Mobutu had no pilots of his own. American Special Forces provided advisors and temporary deployed teams in the mid-1960s, when it was believed that Che Guevara was in Zaire helping the insurgents, because he shows up every time the CIA tries to coup a country, helping the actual freedom fighters while the Americans are the insurgents. At one point, Station Chief Benjamin Hilton Cushing volunteered CIA financing for Zaire's entire mercenary recruiting effort. The CIA Air Force would indeed have been familiar to any veteran of the Bay of Pigs, or for that matter, to any American airman from Jungle Jim. There were 10 C-47 transports, 8 or 9 B-26 bombers, and 8 T-28 fighter bombers. Belgian pilots and maintenance crews worked with the transport planes. The combat pilots were repaired by a company called Western International Ground Maintenance Organization, a corporation chartered in Liechtenstein, which employed 50 to 100 mechanics. When additional mercenaries were hired later to man a patrol boat on Lake Tanganyika, this WIGMO, the Western Intelligence Ground Maintenance Organization, also maintained all of the Navy vessels. The Cuban pilots were hired by another of those Miami front corporations. These are all CIA front companies, by the way. The pilot group on rotation in early 1965 had been described by Mike Hoare, his name is spelled Hoare, as the best crop of Cuban pilots yet. In mid-1966, there were only a dozen Cuban pilots. And again, they're not Cubans. They're Cuban by descent, but these are people that the CIA has living in Miami. Most of these guys will go on to be, if they haven't already been given their citizenship, they're not living here illegally. They're CIA mercenaries, or Gladio operators, as I call them. So only a dozen Cuban pilots were there originally, but they accounted for all of the combat air support given to the troops on the ground. According to Cyrus Vance, an official on the special group, which is the 5412, that's what they're calling that National Security Council group at the time. The decision to wind down the Congo operation was made in early 1966, which is during the Johnson administration. Actual withdrawal took 18 months. This did not end the activities in Africa, however. The station in Ghana is informally credited with assisting the overthrow of Kwame Nkrumah during the year 1966. Some of the Cuban mercenary pilots from Zaire just went over there and started flying missions against them. And they all end up in Angola too, by the way, several years later. The hypothesis that these were private adventures is cast into doubt by the indictment of Intermountain Aviation, another CIA front company, for illegally exporting B-26 bombers to Portuguese Africa. General Counsel Lawrence Houston, who was required to give testimony at the trial, denied any CIA connection to the arms shipment while admitting that the agency had known of the B-26 transfer flights 5 days in advance. The Congo shows the secret warriors in full stride, created under Truman, enhanced by Eisenhower, and used by the Kennedy/Johnson administration. By the 1960s, the capability were in place and the contingencies existed to use them. The Congo was but one front of a global competition. Two such campaigns conducted simultaneously was quite an achievement, meaning that one and Cuba. But even more impressive is that both campaigns were conducted simultaneously while a third one had already began in Vietnam. This would be the biggest one of all, of course. And then chapter 13 begins Vietnam. And since we've spent a lot of time on Vietnam, I'm going to, when we come back on Monday, give you the highlights of what he says. I'm going to at least try to. I said that last time, but it's hard because we have so many new people that don't know the background of some of these stories. And if I can do it without going through the whole thing, or we'll just have an extra long session on Monday and get through the whole thing, because we go from Vietnam and then we go to Laos and Cambodia and the primarily Laos adventure as it expands out. And then we go on to some of the other bigger, broader engagements. And then we end up eventually getting into some, oh gosh. We're going to, obviously follow William Colby around a little bit and talk about the invasion into Afghanistan the first time, and helping out the ISI in Pakistan. And that's about where we get up to with this guy because of when the book was published. So anyway, that's it for that. Now, I am going to, you guys can go ahead and if you guys have anything to add, ask for, or any questions, you can go ahead and ask for Mike while I'm doing this next little part. I noticed that one of the recent presidential executive orders dealt with Yemen. Now, I have on the side been doing quite a bit of research into Yemen, like going back hundreds of years when we realized that Yemen was the only country in the world originally that had coffee, which I didn't know. And because the British had conquered a large part of Yemen to take the port of Aden, so they could monopolize trade in that area. And there was coal there. And so to power the ships and stuff like that, they basically, just like they had done with Hong Kong and several other places, in order to have their empire, they have to secure shipping lanes. And so basically they had invaded Yemen. And if you look at where Yemen is on the bottom of the Arabian Peninsula, coming out of the Suez Canal and all of that other stuff, it's just very strategic for navigation. And so once they did that, they discovered coffee and basically took coffee trees, or whatever it is, the plant, and sold it all over the world so that they could not allow Yemen to have a monopoly. And because they wanted cheaper access to coffee. And so they're the ones that end up bringing it into like some of their territories in Latin America, like in the Guyana, and then it just takes off from there, where you ended up with, 100 years later, a whole ton of coffee plantations. So this is the type of thing. And while most of us nowadays would go, well, why is that such a big deal? Well, that's how these countries basically eked out a living. And to have an imperial power basically come in and steal your shit and give it to other places, which increases competition, for the product and basically takes your profits down, is some of the things. And why it's relevant today is they're still writing about it, because they were pissed off about it. And so there's a lot of hard feelings in a lot of these areas that we have been pushed into some of these territorial disputes that goes back hundreds and hundreds of years before we were even a country, because of this new arrangement of us being the paramilitary, military thug on the block for this Fabian society agenda of one world government. We keep getting shoved in the middle of these grudges between French colonial powers, Portuguese colonial powers, the Dutch colonial powers, the English, because we're now all in NATO, right? And we have the biggest preponderance military. And so our government is equally guilty in this collusion to throw young American blood on the ground, where some of these vengeance arrangements go back, centuries. And that's kind of why when people make comments about, well, it's this group or that group, what you find out is some of these disputes go back before any of us were even a country. So that's why I think it's so important for us to know history and know where these things actually come from, so that we're better prepared. So in that light, what I want to do, and I hopefully will have it done, I'm almost done, to come back at like 7:30 or 8 o'clock tonight, and I'm going to do a space with the Rumble, with it, presentation of Yemen's history and the executive order that was just signed. Because if you look at that executive order, they are trying to designate a particular element of Yemen as a terrorist organization. That should make the hair on the back of your neck stand up. Because what does that do? It invokes 4512-2, which allows us then to send CIA, not that they're not already there, because they are, by the way, just heads up, in to start assassinating people, right? So is the current government perpetuating we're going to designate the good guys as bad guys and go in and kill quote unquote bad guys when they're actually the good guys? And we're going to look into that. I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to present you with the facts, and then you guys can tell me what you think ought to be done, because it's very, very interesting. And it's very involved, actually. It's going to take, I may even actually have to draw a diagram, because the people involved has switched sides over time. And so we're going to kind of just do a running total of who's who and how they aligned with the other Middle East countries, in order for you to see why it's all relevant today with that executive order that was just signed within the last couple of days. So do you got anything,
That
Bridget?
sounds pretty exciting.
It was very educational, I'll just say that.
I tell you what, the more and more we unpack of all the history that's kind of unfolding in front of us, it does give you a much better, with your gladio glasses, you can make a much better informed decision. My opinion, you know. But that's why we're here.
Right. I mean, obviously, we know a lot more about history, having sat through all of these presentations and doing the research to prepare for them, which gives you a different perspective. And so now, as soon as anybody says, hey, this guy's a terrorist or this organization's a terrorist, the very first thing I think now is like, for real? Or are you lying to me again? And generally speaking, they're lying to us again.
Amen. I tell you what, up is down, down is up.
Yep.
You know, you can just about guarantee whatever they say is backwards of what it really is.
And the dilemma that we have now, obviously, is with Trump in office, we're still not going to give the State Department, the CIA, a pass. We are going to research every single decision that's made. Now, there are a lot of people who believe, and I'm not going to discourage people from believing this. There's a lot of people that believe that he is putting people in the spotlight and allowing them to announce what their intentions are, like that with that recent bullshit thing about mRNA vaccines for cancer, that people believe that he's doing that to expose what their agenda is, as if he's concurring with it when he may or may not be. And that may be true, but we are not going to be members of a cult. We are going to, if we have a problem with whoever he happens to be put in front and center, we are going to vocalize the problem that we have. That's called discernment. That's our job. We don't just put a rubber stamp on something just because Trump says it or does it, because there are lots of things that he says that's just blatantly not true. And that was true with the Panama comments that he makes. He basically portrays the loss of life on the building of the Panama Canal as us building the canal and therefore attributing all of those losses to us. And that's absolutely not true. We had single digit thousands of loss, like I want to say around 5,000 to 7,000, depending on which figure you or what source you're looking at. But there was like 25,000 that were lost prior to us taking it over, because it was 40% built when we took it over. And the loss of life to the French project were French slaves that had been gathered up out of their colonies in Africa and brought over to do the labor to build that canal. And they still went broke. That's how fucking clueless they are. Okay. So the French, I mean, and they were using slave labor and still couldn't make the project work. So when he says that basically we gave it back to Panama, it was never ours. The actual treaty that they didn't sign, that we forced down their throats, said we were going to lease it from them. We never actually owned it. And I'm not going to not say that if it's true. And nor should anybody else not call him out on not providing the accurate details. Now, is he doing that as a position of negotiation where you go way far to one side when you want to meet somewhere in the middle? That's a legitimate comment, but it doesn't negate the fact that you're not telling the truth. So I'm committed where truth needs to be told to telling the truth, especially history. We've spent way too much time researching all this shit not to call out people who's going to misdescribe history. Go ahead, Bridget.
As you said, words matter, and calling it what it is and what happened specifically. But it also sheds light for people to research and call him out and get the truth exposed without using his own words. But that's another story. One of the interesting things today, just as a side note, Mario Nafal, the one that Elon Musk always
Yes.
reposts.
Yep.
Okay. Posted 3 hours ago, shocking CIA document reveals U.S. military plot to kill Americans. A declassified CIA document reveals that in the 1960s, the U.S. military planned Operation Northwood.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Oh my fucking God. I'm sorry. Are you kidding me?
No, I swear to God. Which involved committing acts of terrorism against American citizens to justify the war with Cuba. The plot includes proposals like creating a communist Cuban terror campaign. That's how we have to sound familiar, I'm just saying. And he goes on. I will stick it up in the post, but and it actually, he says it came from the Daily Mail, but he also posted a screenshot of one of Lemetzger's signatures on the document. But it's funny because it's like, boy, they're just about 2 steps behind us right now.
Oh my gosh.
So I tagged you in it, by the way.
So I'm sorry. Oh my gosh, it just makes me want to scream very, very loudly, but I will not do that. Okay.
It's good to be right. You know?
It's not even about being right, though. I mean, oh my God. Don't, Bridget, why'd you do that to me? You're going to give me a heart attack. All right, go ahead, Carrie.
Hey, yeah, I just want to agree with what you were just saying. I just saw some post by General Flynn, and it breaks my heart. He's like yakking about Germany and Syrians stabbing Germans, and we have to do something about that. And I was just like, man, I posted back on Twitter, you've been told a million times about Operation Gladio. What's going on with you? But I don't know. I don't know what to think about that. What do you think about that? And Mario is a CIA guy. I want to go figure that out.
Yeah, I'd have to go read General Flynn's post. I haven't seen it. I was a little busy before I started the show, so I haven't looked at Twitter in about 4 or 5 hours. I was working on that thread that I posted right before this show started. So,
and thank you for covering Yemen. I'm so excited. I can't believe you're doing it. I love you so much. And one more thing, coffee is a treat.
Coffee is what?
A treat.
A treat?
Tree. You said coffee.
Oh, a tree. Okay. Yeah, I thought it was a tree. I thought it was a tree.
It's a tree. It's
okay, that's good. All right. I thought it was a tree. I've never actually seen a tree, a bush, or whatever, so I wasn't sure.
I have one.
Yeah, my brain only has so much room in it, and it's pretty much exploded right now. So
I don't know. I think your brain is totally packed.
It's packed full right now. I need to offload some of the information, but apparently people like Mario isn't going to allow me to do that. So I'm going to have to come up with a spiffy reply to Mario. Oh my gosh. All right. So what else we got?
Kristen says, just requested a microphone.
Chris?
But aside from, how you doing, Chris?
Is he talking?
Oh, we can't hear you. So let me drop you down and bring you back up, okay?
He may have not unmuted. Anyway, an update on the shirts real quick. We should be picking them, the first batch of them, up on Tuesday. So they will probably go out in the mail maybe by Thursday, just as a heads up. And we did, I'm supposed to get this evening the rendering of the second side of the coin. So I'm anxiously looking in my email to be able to see that. So, Chris, did you have something you wanted to say?
Hey, how are you?
Great.
Sorry, I was on the PC, and the PC just doesn't handle X spaces as well as the phone.
It does not.
Oh, it's horrendous. And you can have the greatest equipment in the world, which I can prove.
Yep.
doesn't give you any advantages.
Nope.
So, glad to catch you. You were just saying you're needing to dump things out of your head, and we have an appointment we need to make so that I can help you start to do that.
Okay.
I think you and Brady, you might know me through Brady.
Yes, he's talked to me about you. Yeah.
Yes. You just said that. I just wanted to make sure to bullet point that when you're ready, we will chart it out, even if it makes Mario furious.
Yes, because, it actually would be great to be able to have all of that and then just be able to tag people and go, here, read this. Because even though he may have come across Operation Northwood, he has no context in which to even talk about it, which I'm going to give it to him really quick. But
and to be completely fair, I have no context. I get to come in like the dumb blonde and literally just have you describe to me how we need to build.
That's definitely a doable thing. So thank you, Christian. I would love that opportunity. Cousin It.
Yeah, Bridget, I just saw what he posted, and it's funny because that is making the rounds, and it was actually on the Russian channels, and they think that it's such new news that what they were talking about is obviously the bombing of our own ships. Everybody forgets the Maine. They've done that before. So when people start talking about, oh, they were going to bomb our own ships in the Caribbean and yada yada blah blah, remind them we've already done that, and that was the whole remember the Maine bullshit, because it comes down to patterns. What they've done in the past is always going to be in their toolbox, and they're going to pull it out. Like planes flying into buildings, strange shit like that.
Yeah, the Lusitania, all of those, Vietnam, yeah, they do the same shit over and over again. Good point. All along.
Yeah, Colonel, can you hear me okay? Because I'm in a public area with noise. But
No, I can hear you much better than yesterday.
okay, blessed be the Spirit. I wanted to make a point about a media experience I had yesterday, and it might set some relevance to everyone's the topic, but I think it will become clear. Okay, so last night I was listening to a podcast by what I would call a controlled left podcaster regarding Gloria Steinem, and this is a topic that I know all your listeners are pretty familiar with, given her relationship with the CIA, et cetera, et cetera. And so the podcaster was, clearly espousing on she did mention the CIA connections, but it was, an angle that was sort of like, oh, let us the CIA was trying to limit the influence of feminism on black women, which, you know, to some extent, I think there's some truth there, but it's also, I think it's more the working class in general, that they wanted to make it careerist and middle class and you know, upwardly mobile middle class for women, which, you know, there's nothing illegal about that, but et cetera, et cetera. But again, to see the CIA aspect of that and why CIA would want to do that is really important, not only in terms of taking Gloria Steinem good or Gloria Steinem bad, but more important in terms of how they are doing, you know, the psychological programming of media control on our high school children right now, right? And so I was trying to get her to, the podcaster, to raise the C.D. Jackson connection. You know, C.D. Jackson is a kind of an interest of mine. Given his role in, you know, the 1953 OCB heading that enabled all the crazy shit that is totally undocumented by and large, and also culminating in the control of the Zapruder film the weekend of the JFK assassination on behalf of literally Time Incorporated and CIA at the same time. And it was like Yodels, they are not allowed to mention C.D. Jackson or CIA or anything involving the JFK assassination. And it's not just this podcaster, it's literally the entire quote, emphasis quotation marks, left control left at this point. And it's just like, here's an instance where Gloria Steinem is the literal boss was C.D. Jackson's, but not having it. And
Yeah.
this is a pattern I've seen like for a zillion times. And it's just like, what's the overall point? What's, if you're into takeaway, say, tell Mr. Hyde. It's like the baby and bathwater shit is going on in all media, whether it's aimed at the purported left or I'm sure it's that way in the purported right. Also, it's just like you are not allowed access above a certain amount of listeners. It's almost like unless you're performing some sort of baby and bathwater operation, you know, in that
Right.
case, it's keeping the quote left away from CIA, core CIA, national security state history. It's a quid pro quo, you know, media world out here, as you know, and it's like it's important to include that across the board in all media aspects, because it's like it's so late now that if we hear something that's open to more than 100,000 listeners, it's all imperative on us to say, why is this being allowed to, you know, to an audience this large?
So, if you, the only way you get a big audience is if you self-censor. I'm absolutely convinced of that at this point. So it was kind of difficult to hear him. So I do want to just fill you guys in on the main point is that you have people who still don't believe that the CIA has operated inside the United States. And Gloria Steinem, I've written several threads that highlight, you know, the national student movement, the Weather Underground, all was occurring during that same time. And Gloria Steinem was bought and paid for by the CIA to be a women's libber and basically convince young girls that they didn't want to get married. They needed to have a career, i.e. pay taxes on behalf of the oligarchs to make them richer. And that, you know, you could always have children later. And that she was running a psychological operation on the American people, and doing it via magazine and all kinds of different media. And it was clear why they were doing it. It was another step in the destruction of our culture. And it was perpetrated by the CIA, lock, stock, and barrel. So Bridget, go ahead.
I just sent you an article that I just was catching up on the news because I've been cleaning guns all day, and and now I'm really glad I've got clean guns because guess what? They just found some Ohio missing children up in Iceland.
Iceland. I saw that.
Interesting.
That's crazy. How did Ohio missing children get in Iceland?
Maybe the strategic reason for Greenland may have something to do with it.
Maybe. Yeah. So
No, I get that one because I heard about that earlier and posted it because it was out on the foreign channels. The mother or the family member apparently is like mentally ill, and she actually took them to Iceland.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so they were able to work with Iceland and Reykjavik and get the kids back. The mother is in the hospital, et cetera, because I said the same thing. Oh my God, Iceland, right? But no, it was a family member that brought them there.
I got this. Well, that's good news. At least,
good news in that they found them. Yeah.
320 or 340,000. Hopefully they can make better numbers. However, I have heard that Newsmax is running now a live ticker on the deportations at the bottom of the screen.
I love it. Like the COVID case numbers.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh, that's classic.
Right?
All right.
So what are we up to though? Bridget, what's the number?
Oh, hang on, I gotta pull it up. Last time it was, I don't want to give number out of my head because I can't remember exact. Hang on, I'll pull it up.
All right, we're gonna talk about something else while you're looking for that number. So I was contacted yesterday by Maze, who does spaces and co-host. She was co-hosting a space that I had never been in yesterday. And she actually, the title of it was Operation Gladio and something else. And so she, when they set it up, had DM'd me and asked me to be a part of it. You know, normally I would need a little bit more of a heads up, but because I did 4 shows yesterday between the 3rd and the 4th one, I had, you know, about 30 minutes that I could jump on there. So I did. And she asked me to give, you know, like the 30,000 foot overview of what it was. And so, of course, I went back and talked about the, and I saw several of you guys had either were in there or followed me in there. So I, you know, started with World War II, the stay behind units, and kind of just, you know, said that it's the CIA and how they use Chiang Kai-shek, generate money. You know, you guys have heard the whole thing several times because you guys are awesome. And there's a guy that I don't know what the rest of his name was because I didn't click on his profile. All I could see was the first 5 digits was called Truth. And he immediately like went crazy. And I'm not being hyperbolic. He literally came in and I can't believe you didn't mention, you said all of that crap and you didn't mention one time that it was Israel and Mossad and they're behind everything. And he just went on and on. So Maze twice had to mute him. And finally, he left the space because he wasn't going to be allowed to talk over me. That is one of the reasons why I don't go into spaces very often. I will go in for Maze because I know that she will control the space. But most people allow people to talk over each other, and I'm not about that. So I want to point out a couple of things about the exchange, and I would have went into this, but I had to get off because I was almost late for Con and Alpha's show last night as a result of that. Or the other, I don't remember where it was in the scheme of things. My whole day yesterday was just kind of one podcast after another. But anyway, the point that I wanted to make is, you can have every single detail memorized of a 50-year span of time about one thing. I talk about one thing, that's Operation Gladio. I don't exclude any country, any intelligence agency, or anything else as it relates to Operation Gladio. You guys know that. Everybody that has touched it has been exposed to the extent that I know about their affiliation with it. I don't keep anything. I don't protect anybody. And so not one time did this guy refute anything that I said. Everything that I said was 100% true. But if you don't tell a story in addition to what I presented as truth, if you don't tell the story the way they want you to tell the story, then in their mind, the story's not valid. And we kind of talked about this over the last couple of days, about trying to interject truth into conversations that people already have a preconceived idea of how things unfolded. And the comment that I made to him in the middle of his tirade is that the origins of this story predates Israel. So it's not like Israel is behind Operation Gladio, because they're not. All of the post-World War II intelligence agencies are on par accomplices in Operation Gladio, some more so than others. And the granddaddy among all of these is MI6, which should give people who have a functioning brain pause to say, well, if MI6 was the only countrywide, foreign, worldwide intelligence service, and all of the documentation for the creation of Israel came out of the exact same country, and the creation of Zionism came out of the exact same country, that there may be more to the story than starting in 1947 with a country called Israel and an intelligence agency called Mossad. There's a much bigger world out there that existed before either of those two entities did. And so it's important to be upfront. And that's what I pointed out to after they booted him from the space, is there's a lot of this that you can actually talk about relating to Israel. And we've done so. You guys have heard me talk about the fact that Galil, the munitions manufacturing company, kind of sat up in Latin America somewhat ahead of time when they were going
Diamond mines.
Hold on just a second.
I'm sorry, I can't help myself.
Yeah. When they were setting up Operation Condor as if they had a heads up of what was coming down the pike. We've also talked about the year-long training program that was given to the drug cartels, in which was basically somewhat of like the third level, with Taiwan and the School of America being the first and second level. And so all of those, you can't have one without the other. It's not like they did the entire thing. And it's not like the CIA's done the entire thing. There is a collective effort, but the MI6 link as the origins to the whole thing, and then you have a bunch of, I wouldn't even say they're, I'm just going to say they're peers at this point. Intelligence agencies that are colluding together, but the origins of Operation Gladio 100% was within NATO, and then eventually spread to the NATO aligned countries as well. So, did you have anything else you wanted to add, Cousin It?
No, you know what though, that whole exchange, on a personal note, I do follow him and he is a very smart person, but boy, did he act like a petulant child. And I was really surprised, particularly when the whole point of the conversation, as I understood it, was just to give people a generalized overview. So for that son of a bitch to sit there and start screaming and acting like a child, you know, we're trying to put years of research, Bridget, the Colonel, and myself, years of research into a 10-minute overview to give people a synopsis, and you want to start, like, throwing stones? Piss off. I was just shocked. I really was. I was just shocked.
So,
but no, I don't think he was thrown out. I think he packed his toys and left.
No, I don't know that he was thrown out. He left. So I do want to also tell you that I practice what I preach. I ask you guys to engage, and so I do it as well. And exactly what always happened. After that interaction, I go back to how many people, because I keep tabs on it, that follow my account on X, because of how often we do these things. I want to know what resonates. If there was something that generates more interest or more followers to come in, Bridget and I have been keeping track of this with the short videos and stuff like that, and trying to change that up so we can get more exposure on Gladio. So I went in after the sit rep with Badlands Media yesterday, and we had like 250 new followers as a result of that. So that exchange was heard by everybody, and they shoot themselves in the foot when they try to attack somebody telling the truth, because it just drives more people to the truth. So you have those conversations, not for the asshole that is trying to be a jerk. You have those conversations for everybody that was listening, which is why when I can, if I'm going to be available, I will go into spaces where I know that the host and co-host will moderate and allow the truth to be told. And so it's not a pleasant situation to have people act like assholes, but if you can reach another couple hundred people for them to be exposed to the truth as well, it's all worth it. Carrie, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to thank you, Colonel, because what you're talking about, I have fallen in that hole as well. The ideology catches me, and I have been very rude to you about it, the Mossad and Israel, and I think, I'm not sure you explained this or somehow I caught it. I think it was you. Correct me if I'm wrong. That basically, and I know this stuff, like, it's a shield. They put up a shield. So these are Jews. You can't go against them. And So by me opposing that, I get caught in their trap. You understand what I mean? It's like a honey trap, like an ideological trap. Oh, you have to be against the Jews. No, that has nothing to do with anything. But it's so hard to see that. So I do have compassion for this guy because it's really hard to see past their schemes. And
Well,
it's a big scheme and you get trapped. You're fucking trapped.
Well, let me share with you, because I don't think we've ever actually talked about this. You guys have read my comments about it because I posted about it. When I was talking to Alpha Warrior before one of the shows about Mike Benz early on, like a month or two ago, and discovered that he had an alter ego and that he had actually been an FBI informant and had been working to infiltrate the Proud Boys in a prior life. And all of these other crazy things. Because I asked Alpha because Alpha talks to everybody. And I had noticed that Mike Benz had unfollowed me, which is kind of weird when you're talking about the same thing. So why would you not want my stuff on your timeline kind of thing? And he reached out. He had actually followed me to DM me because he wanted some of my material and he wanted sources for the material. I didn't give him any of my material. I just told him to go read a book because I don't play that kind of shit. So I mentioned it to Alpha and he goes, "Oh my God, Colonel." And he sent me this crap load of stuff on Mike Benz and that he had been on some game thing. I don't know anything about any of that stuff as a character called Frame Game. And for anybody that doesn't know this, that's part of psychological operation is framing situations to get the target to come into like literally a picture frame. So you're going to frame the situation, get them to come in so that you can capture them into an operation to get them to do something that would be incriminating to themselves. It's a frame game. And we talk about that in, like the overview of psychological operations as it relates to warfare. So I'm very familiar with how it works. He actually used that name as his handle on this gaming system. And he used that in order to infiltrate the Proud Boys. He went actually through an initiation. I didn't even know they had one, but they do. There's videos all out on the internet about this. And again, I was shocked to learn all of that stuff. And if you don't have conversations with people, you don't know those kind of things. So his whole because everybody knows that he's, I don't know that everybody knows, but he's Jewish. He has never hidden that. And he used that in the Proud Boy initiation as, hey, because I am Jewish, I have more authority to talk about anti-Semitism, and I have more authority to criticize Jewish people. And all of you white nationalist people that hate Israel or whatever, I'm just making this shit up. This isn't what he said, but this is the vein in which he was saying it. You guys are all right. They're awful people. And I know that because I'm one of them. And let me share with you some of my experience as an insider to this community. That's how he ingratiated himself or infiltrated the Proud Boys and then was basically egging them on to say things that would have been stuck in an informant file on them for later prosecution. All of this is very well documented. And so, again, I'm shocked. I'm not surprised, but shocked that this is going on around us. We are living a operation and we're all involved in it, guys. And we need to understand that. which is why you always have to look at situations of standing back and figuring out who's benefiting the most from this. And that is part of anybody, even the guy that was there yesterday. Who knows but what he puts on? And I'm not saying he does, but you have to consider the possibility of him projecting a persona in order to wrap people in, and then there's somebody tracking everybody that follows him that makes and falls into that. You have to at least consider the possibility that that's a honey trap to get you to say things and do things that you shouldn't be saying and doing online. Those are the circumstances that we live in. Even the people that are the most virulent anti-Israel may or may not be actually anti-Israel. So you guys have to show the ability to discern where you're at in conversations and not allow yourself, and this, Carrie, is to your point exactly, not allow yourself to be roped into conversations that is later going to show up when you get a speeding ticket. Not that that's actually going to happen. And somebody realizes, oh, hey, you're this person or whatever, because you're now on somebody's radar and your house gets swatted or whatever. Because they're going to start picking on you. Don't put yourself in those situations. Don't get baited in by people and their virulent hatred, because it may or may not be real, and you may or may not be the target.
Yeah, actually, I would go further than that, because I think that everything you think and do and feel matters to the whole of everything. And if you're spending all your time like hating on these people, I mean, I am absolutely guilty of this. If I'm spending all my time doing that, what else could I be doing with my time that's actually productive? And I think that's a hit job on our society.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Just don't buy into it. Okay.
I can't get the Newsmax live feed to come up, so I can't show you the ticker. I'll give you the number. But I did post the video of they sent, and I'm sure you're more familiar with these types of airplanes that they sent down to the border and the active military, which is just amazing. And I'm sure you'll appreciate it.
Where'd you post it at?
Stuck it right above with Dan Scavino.
Okay. I'll click on that and see what it is.
The video of the
oh, that's the Osprey.
Yeah, they're so ugly, but they are so cool.
They're actually a piece of shit. They've had a whole bunch of them crash. I would never get in one of those ever.
They can use those for the deportation.
Yeah. But anyway, that's just me. All right. So if we don't have anything else, we're going to call it an evening so I can put the finishing touches on my Yemen stuff. And I've got a video I have to get out that Bridget sent me the material for, just a short one. And those will be coming out this evening. And like I said, oh, dang, the sun's coming in my window here and it makes me look like I've got angel rays coming in on Rumble. I just looked up and noticed that. I'm like, what the heck is that? I got like this rainbow thing coming in from the window.
Well, maybe you do have angel rays.
It looks really cool.
Angel. You are an angel.
No, I am not, honey. But thank you for saying that.
We have to work with her. Just for the record.
All right. So anyway, I will be back probably somewhere between 7:30 and 8 o'clock. I will make a post on it coming up once I get the finishing touches. I actually have to go make dinner first. And then go ahead, Cousin It.
I'm sorry, I just had one more thing because it's been on my mind all day. the Russians are talking about the organ harvesting again, and how the organs are being sold on the black market, and how they got the baby farms and what have you. So all of that information is starting to make headlines, whether or not here or I posted a bunch of stuff today, and if you guys wouldn't mind, just so people start becoming aware of what was actually going on in Ukraine, if you could share that, because at some point Trump and Putin are going to talk about that, and we have to show that people it's not a lie, that they really did do that. Places like the Red Cross and Doctors Without Borders. Excuse me. So it was a really hard morning, actually. But I did get as much as I could put together. If you guys wouldn't mind just, sending out the word, because it will come up. If the Russians are talking about it as adamantly as they are today, something that they've not really talked about for a little while, it's on the list of stuff they're going to talk to Trump about. So that's all. Thank you.
Zelensky was on the same note. Zelensky was out panicking and released a video. I haven't seen it yet, but it sounds like he knows once this comes to an end, he's expendable. And I think he's packing his shit.
Well, the Russians are going to kill him. I mean, there really is no way about it. He can think he can hide in his little beach house in Miami, but at the end of the day, they got rid of Bandera, right? I mean, they got rid of Bandera in Germany, in Munich. So they will get rid of it. It is a matter of time, but they're not going to take him out while he's still, quote, the president of Ukraine. But they absolutely will take care of him. There is no doubt in my mind that man is like a dead man walking. And if, by the way, and the only reason why I'm going to put this out there, in my opinion, the only reason why that man is still alive is because he's got a hell of a suicide note. And that's why the United States hasn't gotten rid of him, because he's outlived his usefulness over a year ago. So anyway, that's all I got with that.
Okay. Well, on that note,
Right? Interesting times. People were living out stuff that's going to be written in history. It's just amazing.
I agree with that. Quite a time to be alive. All right, everybody. Again, I will be back in a little while. And then you guys have a nice weekend. And we will be back here at 4 p.m. on Monday. Take care, everybody. Okay, over to Rumble. Thank you guys all for being here. Yeah, my ray's already gone. It was like just temporary. Let's see. Things that just doesn't happen. See, Cam. Hello, Colonel Tanner. I am in contact with someone that you should talk with. How can I facilitate an introduction? Well, CCAM, if you are you on X? I don't know if you're still here. If you are, let me know what social media that you're on. Let's see. I will try to figure out the Rumble chat. LOL, sit and be safe. Robert David Steele is connected to General Jim Jones and Robert Stone before he went good. Steve Pazinik, clowns. I actually was deployed with General Jim Jones when he was a colonel for 6 months. He didn't turn out at all like I thought he would. I really liked him when he was there. And I actually met General Gray because he was coming in as the commandant at the time I was his escort officer when he came into northern Iraq while I was there. So very interesting. No, I'm not. You're not on any social media. That's about the only way that there is to get a hold of me. So thank you, Cindy, for being here and watching it. Hey, Donnie Vision. You guys all, I do have to run. Thank you for being here. And you guys have a nice weekend. We will be back on Monday to continue the President's Secret Wars series. And I really appreciate you guys being here. I'm sure they're very charismatic and cool to be around. General Jones, actually, I went to his commandant change of command. He was a very nice guy. He spoke fluent French, which a lot of the Kurdish people, which is where I was at, spoke French. And because he was a colonel and this was the command staff, and he was a fairly new colonel at the time. And so there's a protocol seating chart for helicopters. And because he was one of the lower date of rank colonels, he ended up always having to sit next to me, like at the dinners and stuff that we had. Because of course there's seating protocols for the dinners as well. And so I did get to talk with him quite a bit, and I got to be, we weren't friends or anything, but I did get to know him. Well, if you fast forward several years, I was at the Pentagon, and General Jay Garner, who was our commanding officer, he gets assigned to the Army Space Force commander job, which is a 3-star billet. He was a 2-star when we were deployed. He's from just south of my hometown here in Central Florida. So I actually did get to be very good friends with him. And he gave me a coin. One of these coins up here has the date I pinned on Major, because he engraved his challenge coin with the date that I pinned on Major and came to my promotion ceremony at the Pentagon. And General Jones and him and I used to be at the POAC, which is the Pentagon Officers Athletic Center, every morning to work out. And so I would see him every morning. And General Jones recognized me from, I was the only woman there. So it kind of was a unique situation. And when he got selected to be the commandant, he gave me an invitation, and I actually sat right behind his family at the ceremony. So it was kind of cool. But it turned out to be a little shit, as so many of them do, unfortunately. But anyway, little side story. Thanks for being here, everybody. Have a nice weekend. If you guys want to come back at about 7:30 or 8, we will be live, and we will be talking about Yemen. So I will see you then.